under God,
acknowledged addendum number 1. Their bid is $946,101. And the third is from Nilson Construction. They've acknowledged it in addendum 1. And their bid is for $834,198.60.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we acknowledge the 3 bids, with Nilson's being the lowest. Turn those over to the engineering and also to Curtis for review, and also make sure that they fit in within the parameters of the assessment area.
we have a motion on
I'll second that.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is the review of prior minutes. Commissioners, we have a couple sets of minutes. Let's first review the minutes from the meeting held May 16th, 2018.
On this, item number 1, where it's talking about Nick Tatton, second line in the first main paragraph, it says $50 per hour research built against the retainer. I think that's supposed to be billed against the retainer. Next line down also says conduct meetings and hearings billed against the retainer instead of built against the retainer. With those changes, if there are no others, I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
All right, when you say billed, you know, as in expensed or?
Yeah, expensed against the retainer.
Right, very good. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries to approve that set of minutes. The next set of minutes is June 6th.
I saw no changes.
I didn't either. I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, we have the review and possible approval of fiscal year 2018-2019 interlocal cooperation and subrecipient contract agreement with Southeastern Utah Association of Local Governments for Senior Center funding. Debbie Coey.
Hello. Debbie, you want to pull the mic down towards you, please,
Yes.
so that everybody can hear you and that it's on.
Oh, well, let's just turn it around. So it's the same contract that we've had forever. There is a slight increase from last year, about $16,000, a little more than $16,000.
Very good. Is that the only change?
Yes.
I think for the record, we should read in the contract total amount between the nutrition funding and the socialization and recreation funding is $1,108,987.
All right, commissioners, with that, I'll,
Make a motion to approve.
we have a motion.
I'll second that.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can I get some signatures?
Thank you. Item number 4 on the agenda. Consideration and possible approval of Resolution 2018-10, appointing the CARE Coalition to oversee and implement the Intergenerational Poverty, or IGP, plan on behalf of Carbon County and approve use of Circles Initiative as part of the IGP plan. We have members of the CARE Coalition. We have members of the Association of Local Governments here. Jade, are you going to be the spokesman to briefly review this and tell the community about the Intergenerational Poverty Plan?
Okay, so there's a plan in place called the IGP plan that the county has wrote, and it identifies different agencies and different programs on how to tackle the IGP issues that we have in our community. And so what's on the agenda today is to have the CARE Coalition, who also has standards and goals that align with the IGP plan that the state is wanting, where they're already aligning just to collaborate together and come together. And so that's the resolution we're hoping for, is just that the CARE Coalition has the power to oversee that plan and to make the updates and the changes that may need to happen.
And our approval as Carbon County today is basically our blessing on top of the CARE Coalition performing those duties.
Okay.
And basically, Commissioners, these grant applications ask that the county designates an implementation agency or a lead agency, an implementation committee, and a lead agency, which I think the CARE Coalition can act as both of those on behalf of the county and be your liaison and your representative, your fact-finding body and your implementation team.
Correct. And just so everyone knows, the CARE Coalition is this coalition, and it's compiled of 2 different boards. There's the Key Leader Board and then the Community Board. Key Leader Board has the commissioners on it, local business owners, the hospital CEO, all the mayors, the university school superintendent, those figures. And then there's the Community Board, which are more of the boots on the ground type of people to run the CARE Coalition. And then below the Community Board, there's 4 different subcommittees, and we just identified an IGP subcommittee that their sole focus will be on the IGP plan.
So for the information of people that may not know what the CARE Coalition is about, will you explain what their mission is?
Yeah, so the CARE Coalition, it stands for Carbon Addiction Reduction and Elimination. Basically what it is it's prevention. helping kids make the right choices now so that they can have a more successful future. And so we identify different risk factors that if they continue down the path that they're going down right now, then we can have a more successful outcomes in the future. And so some of those things are like low commitment to school, substance abuse, just antisocial behavior. Those are just a couple that, to name a few, that we are kind of tackling and trying to do some preventative actions right now.
Okay.
Commissioners, I don't know if you have any other questions. I'll entertain a motion if not.
I'll make a motion to appoint the CARE Coalition to oversee the Intergenerational Poverty Initiative.
You want to add the resolution to that, Commissioner?
To approval of the resolution and
Yes, approval of the resolution 2018-10.
And I'll second that.
okay. And do we need to also include in that the Circles initiative? You had mentioned the Intergenerational Poverty Initiative.
Yes, although we don't need to put that specifically in the resolution itself, that they did ask that you recommend that or
I'll
participate in that program.
amend my motion to include the Circles initiative as well.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Very good.
Thank you, JJ.
And just for informational purposes, we have a short video on the Circles program, which is, again, part of the initiative of the CARE Coalition, and also in regards to intergenerational poverty. I'll go ahead and hit the lights. This is a short video from one of the allies, one of the volunteer members of our community. Him and his wife have spent some of their own time volunteering to be a part of the lives of individuals in poverty, and kind of just a brief explanation of their experience.
When I was a young man in the 7th grade, I had an art faculty, an art teacher who took an interest in me and spent his free hour every day working with me. He started little by little convincing me that there was something in me and that I did dare to set out to achieve those things, that I did dare to dream. And some years ago I realized how important it was to have mentors like that who help us understand that there is something inside of us that we can develop, and we just have to be able to understand what that is and then dream of it and dedicate ourselves to achieving those dreams. My experience with Circles was that I recognized that that was the core insight of this Circles program, is that people need validation and help to dream and to dedicate themselves to those dreams.
I guess I went into it kind of judgmental, like the people that we would be working with had some flaws that I didn't personally have. And I learned that what they really had was strengths that I didn't have, character that I didn't have. And for most of us in the middle class, we have that handout. We have support, we have family resources. If you're wealthy, you can buy your way out of serious mistakes, or if you're powerful. But they don't have those resources accessible to them. And so I just had a wonderful learning experience with some people that I grew to love and I believe in. I think that they have the strength of character to do these hard things that they're trying to do. So I saw people taking little steps that eventually over time we'll move them to hopefully a better place, but they need support to do it. They need the courage to do it. They need somebody to believe in them, and that I think is critical. That's what I really saw, is that without that piece of somebody believing in them, those hard steps are too hard for them to take. But with that, they'll do it, and they'll make those little steps and find their way to real change.
One of the things that I want to say is how much regard I have for the people that I came to know and I worked with. How deeply I came to feel about them. They are some of the dearest friends that I have. I just came to have one of the most significant friendships that I've ever had with the people who were at Circles. And not only the ones that I was assigned as their mentor, but with all of them who came. We shared a meal every week, and I just came to enjoy and like them immensely, and I felt like they were just dear, dear friends. If you're going to be an ally, you have to be there. And I guess we do the things that we do because they're fulfilling to us, and so it didn't seem like a tremendous burden to me, because it was so fulfilling, and in the end it was quite fun.
It was a thing that if I did have to miss because of being out of town or something, I really missed it. So it didn't seem like it was really demanding, but it was more like something that we looked forward to.
I felt downright fatherly toward them. I felt in ways similar to how I feel about my married children. As a parent, you watch your kids do those things, and you support them in it, and you try to help them wrestle with the things in their lives.
Well, just when you look back on your own life and you look at all the advantages, and like Joe said, all the help that you've received, the people who've picked you up when you needed to be picked up and dusted you off, it feels like we're at a time in our life where we can pay more attention to that. It's a good thing to do. It's a worthwhile way to spend your time sometime.
Here a week or two ago, we said goodbye to our dear, dear friends. And there were hugs that went around, and we told each other that we'd miss each other. And these are some of the most dear people that I can imagine. I just love these people. It's been a really transformative thing. And then before you know it, you're going to their kids' ball game and sitting by them in the stands, and you're texting each other all the time, and they talk to you about their automobile loans and all kinds of things. And so when you say goodbye, you give each other a great big hug and tell each other thank you, and it's a very rewarding thing.
All right. Well, we appreciate that video that was put together on short notice, just explaining the impact not only to the family being assisted and helped who is in poverty, but also to the allies, those who volunteer their time and their busy schedules and try to make a difference in someone else's life to try and help those kids and those families come out of poverty, and to make, in a way, gain those resources they wouldn't otherwise have. Moving on to our next item on the agenda, number 5, we have review and possible approval of contract amendment for Children's Justice Center fiscal year 2019 funding from the State of Utah Attorney General's Office. Shelley.
Thank you. Same contract, we're just amending the contract amount. For this fiscal year, our amended amount is $110,382. The contract terms remain the same. It's just renewing it starting July 1, 2018 and ending June 30th, 2019.
Commissioners, I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion
I'll second
and
that.
a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thanks, Shelley.
And then I need them signed.
Yes. And while we're signing those, I guess if anybody's interested in becoming an ally or working with the Circles program, Jade, they just get in touch with the Association of Local Governments?
Correct.
Okay. In fact, while I'm signing this, will you come to the mic and tell them where the association is and all of that? Julie? Julie, Jade?
So I'll have Julie come up here and tell you because she's the Circles coordinator.
So the best thing is if anyone would like to
Shelley.
participate in Circles or learn more about it, you could contact myself or Jade, but my direct number is 613-0065. And my email is jwalker@seualg.utah.gov. And we're really, really excited about being able to be so fortunate to have Circles in our community, because we are seeing the tremendous amount of work that our participants are putting into it, and also what others are gaining from it. And it's going to take us all, each and every one of us in this room, to help move the needle. So we would love to have, a lot of people think it's such a huge time thing, but it's really not. There's things you could do for an hour a month. So we would love each to talk to everyone and to pass the word on, and we're always happy to do things like Bridges Out of Poverty, presentations and trainings, and so I would love to hear from a ton of you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you, Julie.
What's that?
Oh, yes, if you'd please stay for the next one. Commissioners, on the agenda, we have another item that is farther down the list, but we're going to address it now. It's item number 21. 22,
Sorry.
yes. And the purpose for that is that Shelley has some other commitments she needs to get to quickly, and so we're going to move that item up since it deals with her and her office.
Thank you. So this year we wrote our very first VOCA grant, which is Victims of Crimes Act grant, and it is funding to help support in-house therapy at the Children's Justice Center. And I've never written one before, so this was my first go round. We did get the grant. They approved, I think it's on the budget. They approved $20,636.42. But with that process, they require us to have an authorization for electronic signature for the VOCA grant application, contract, and terms and conditions. And so that's why I'm here today, to see if we can have that signed, authorizing me to electronically sign the VOCA application contract.
Okay. And Christian, have you had have you had a chance just to review the simple one-page?
I have, and I don't have any problems with it.
Okay.
It's very similar to the VOCA funding that the Sheriff's Office gets for the victim advocate. All of the language and the contracts are all the same. Our focus is different, but all of the language is the same.
And Commissioners, did you have any questions in regards to the electronic signature for that grant? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to go ahead and approve the electronic signature.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Shelley.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
And I
Shelley.
need that signed too.
Okay. So we have item number 5 and 22 taken care of. Now moving back to item number 6 on the agenda. Item number 6, we have the ratification of a letter supporting the State of Utah's Public Land Policy Coordinating Office, known as PLPCO, submission of a petition to revise Roadless Rule 2001 regarding the management of Utah's inventoried roadless areas. And Todd, would you like to speak to this and why we sent in this letter of support to PLIPCO? Basically, my general understanding was they were making some changes that would take away some of the limitations we might have in the near future as far as some of our Forest Service roads.
Yes, so there's been 2 states in the country that have petitioned the roadless rule with the Forest Service, which prohibits roads being created on a national forest. So Utah is going to also petition the rule with the hopes of being able to reduce some of the restrictions on being able to build roads for timbering and other access. So the Forest Service is in the process of completing a NEPA analysis on the Manti La Salle to do a big timbering project. And with the hope of that timbering project lasting in between 10 and 15 years, some temporary roads may have to be built to access timber. With this rule, with petitioning this rule and hopefully being able to lessen those restrictions, we'll be able to access more timber and be able to make our national forest a little bit more healthy.
And there were some time constraints, and so we've already sent in this letter.
Yep.
The agenda item right now is to ratify us sending that in support.
Yep.
I'll make a motion that we ratify the signing of the letter of support.
And I'll
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you. Motion carries. Item number 7, review and possible approval of Amendment number 8 to lease agreement with the State of Utah Administrative Office of the Courts for the Guardian ad litem offices.
Commissioners, this one, amendment number 7, has already come before you in the last several months. When the new 7th District Court building is completed, which is the building that's being built on Main Street, which I would like to mention is a state-funded project. It's entirely funded, both its construction and maintenance, by the state, the Administrative Office of the Court in the state of Utah, and no taxpayer dollars will be going to that project, despite what some people may think. When they built that project, the Guardian ad litem's office was designed to stay in the north part of the existing building, the Tri-Court building. Originally, they had said that they only wanted so much office space. They've come back and said, you know, with the idea for future expansion, we want additional square footage. It's the same contract that we've already approved, just an additional square footage, which will actually require us to put in a little bit less build out. We're not going to have to put in the wall that we were originally required to put in. And it's the same rate per square foot as before, just more square footage, so they'll pay a little bit more in rent. I believe everything else is the same as the one that was approved last time. There was one question. It has been contemplated that one of the suggested uses for that building, once the court has vacated the building, it would be a place to house the health department. This part of the building would not be, it wouldn't inhibit them from being able to do what they want to do. It's square footage that they wouldn't need anyway, because it's right on that the northern wall of that building, which is what they would like. So if you have any questions, I can try to answer them.
I don't have any questions.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve amendment number 8 to the lease agreement with the state of Utah.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Seth. Item number 8 on the agenda, the review and possible revisions to Carbon County volunteer policy. Commissioners, apologize for getting this to you a little bit late today. Just as a brief overview, there isn't anything, how would you say, too extensive. Rita was good enough to highlight on some of the pages what our current policy says there on the first page. If we go down to screening, it talks about before providing any services, volunteers are required to pass any and all screening requirements that apply to employees performing the same services that the volunteers will be performing on behalf of the county. In reviewing Similar policies from other counties on the next page. We do have one from Uinta County. They leave it a little bit open, a little bit less restrictive. As it reads right now, if we were to have somebody volunteer to broom out one of the facilities, or to help clean up a mess that was made, or to have a volunteer Eagle Scout project, we would have to possibly background check and drug screen all of these individuals just to perform any type of function that a county employee might perform. And my suggestion would be, if I might read how we have it in the Uinta County policy. Depending on the nature of the volunteer service, the proposed volunteer may be required to submit to pass a physical examination, drug screen, or other tests that prove the individual is capable to perform the duties of the volunteer service. That simply leaves it to our discretion. If we are having a one-time cleanup activity, a volunteer service, and we feel that it is prudent that people can come in and help us clean up an area of the fairgrounds or any other facility, and if we don't find that there's any, after consulting with our safety person, that there's any risk involved, or that those risks are properly addressed, then it would facilitate people in our community to be able to volunteer. My purpose and reasoning behind bringing this to our attention is just that I don't want to discourage community members from volunteering. If somebody is willing to volunteer and we put them through a very stringent, cost-restrictive process, having to pay for background checks and physical examinations and the such, it makes it difficult to call on them on a moment's notice. And so just for future volunteer activities and current activities that we are engaged in at this time, I feel some type of change similar to what Uinta County does, specific to that paragraph, would be helpful. In addition, in the Uinta County policy, if you flip to the next page, on just page 2 of their volunteer policy, Rita has been good enough to bracket a few paragraphs that I agree with her on as far as their importance, that maybe we should address within our volunteer policy, such as any legal claims that may befall the county pursuant to volunteers acting on behalf of the county. And these paragraphs basically allow us some wiggle room as far as do we want to cover a volunteer for their acts when they were volunteering on behalf of the county. And it also puts into perspective, just with some legal language, what we'd be able to do in various scenarios. And so something to consider. I don't know that we want to make a motion to include any of that language at this time, but for further discussion. But I would entertain comments, and if you feel, and again, with this being late notice, we don't necessarily have to make a motion today, but I would urge that we have further discussion on these items.
Commissioner, I think before we could vote on anything, we'd need to see the proper language brought back so that we could see how it does directly affect the policies that are already in place. A couple of things that I would note as I've read through those is, one, who determines what those requirements are for that volunteer. I know subject to perhaps what it involves, but we would need to have at least someone, whether that's HR, commission, however that would work, that would say, for this thing, these things need to happen, in conjunction with the sheriff's office, perhaps, if there's an issue that would involve law enforcement. So that would be one thing that I think that we need to have that discussion on. And I think that that's very vital, because as in the last event, as we went through this process and it was hurried, we did have people that did not qualify to perform the functions that they were wanting to do, just based on some of that very general background. So I think it's important to refine it a little bit more than just what Uinta County has in there. The second page on that with their other paragraphs, yeah, those are very, very good points. The other thing, that if we go down that road and we loosen that policy at all, then again, maybe some type of a time frame needs to be built into it in regards to how long does the process take? Should they need a full background or drug testing or whatever, so that we don't get right up to the very next day of the event and we're still trying to process those things. But I'm certainly willing to look at those, but would like to see other language come back before we took any kind of a vote on it.
For sure.
It's similar. I would like to see the language before we approve anything. And as far as maybe there's some levels at which if they're going to run equipment, they do a drug screen and a background check. If they're going to be working with children, there should be a level for that. If they're going to be, if they're just volunteering for a one-time event and it's in the general public, we need to kind of specify at what levels, so we're protecting the public and also protecting, for example, the equipment. If somebody's wanting to run a piece of equipment, they should be certified through the safety department that they know how to run it without beating up on the equipment and things like that. So I think there are things that we should add, maybe some levels of what type of service kick, what degree of background check and drug screen we apply to each volunteer.
Mm-hmm. You know, and just to identify a separation of what our policy says and you know, what is allowed in regards to the sheriff's office for search and rescue and all of that. There's actually some state legislation that allows, you know, the sheriff to, with the search and rescue, to call on anybody in a moment's time and go and do what they got to do. With regards to the county, and I appreciate Nick Tatton's words with Price City, you know, there comes a point where you have to weigh risk with reality. And so oftentimes, what is the cost benefit of, you know, a lot of restrictive procedures and different things when it's just a city cleanup project?
So, Commissioner Miller, if I could just clarify on that language that we already have. It says volunteers are required to pass any and all screening requirements that apply to employees performing the same services that the volunteer will be performing. So in other words, if you've got an employee whose job is to, whose primary job is, say, cleaning, doing cleaning, and that person doesn't have to have a CDL, then we don't require it. And if a person, if the volunteer is coming to do a job that our full-time employee is not required to do random drug screenings from, then we already don't require that. And if a person's coming to do a job that doesn't require a background check because they're not going to be working with youth, then we already don't require that of volunteers. In other words, that provision says if the employee doing that job has to do these background checks and screenings, then the volunteer must. But if he doesn't have to, then the volunteer doesn't have to either. So when you say you have to screen a Boy Scout troop to come do a cleanup project, I don't think that's not required right now by our
it's interpreted
policy
currently by many that they would, simply because every county employee is required to have a background check. There isn't anybody hired on except perhaps an elected official that doesn't receive a background check, and you know, to a certain extent through the normal hiring process is a drug test. And so even though it's not pursuant to the work being performed, so if somebody is just performing cleaning and janitorial services, we still background check them. But and so basically the intent of what I'm trying to do when I say loosening things up is we want to be able to facilitate volunteers to not have to go through such a rigorous process if it's not deemed necessary based on what they're doing.
Commissioner Miller, currently I agree with Christian, we do that. For instance, at the senior center, we don't drug test or we don't do background checks on our senior volunteers. Groups that come in, we never do that. It'd be too cost prohibitive for the county to do that. But in the last instance, and this last, you know, if we hadn't done it, we could have had 2 individuals that came back with some real negative things on their background that could have put the county in a liability position. So currently we don't require everyone.
I think there's some confusion with what is being referenced as far as most recent events. We had a volunteer group cleaning out the arena And they were not background checked, but
No.
I was scrutinized because they should have been. We had somebody running a hose, and running a hose does not, in my opinion, require a background check. So what I'm getting at, I'm not talking specific to the bartending. I'm not talking about equipment use. I'm talking about being able to help and assist in a, in a program, in a scouting activity to put up some goals.
And we have never, ever required that.
We have never, ever, but in our policy currently, it says
So-
any services a county employee would do would require the same.
Well, and I agree with Christian. It depends if if they need to be task trained by our safety department.
And my point is not being made with our current practices, but what our policy currently says.
And if you would like me, also I can actually reach out to other counties besides Uinta to see
Yeah.
what they do.
Well,
I
and
would be happy
I've
to
already
do
reached
that.
out to several,
So-
and St. George City and a few other places, and I can provide you that information as well.
Okay.
So, point being made, I think that, the reason for this topic on the agenda is simply so that those who are willing to volunteer and help in our community, we don't want them to be fearful. I mean, I had the soccer people asking me, hey, are we going to be in trouble for putting together these goals? Are we going to get in trouble because we've heard there's a volunteer policy out there that is really crazy or stringent, in their words. And, we kind of just went ahead and did it, even though it was questionable. And so, some revision of what our current policy says is the reason and point behind why this item is on the agenda today.
Are you going to work and bring back some other language then as we talk about it further? And are you going to solicit that through Christian or through Rose?
I think we can work with Rose and we can have that.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
item number 9 on the agenda, review and possible approval of county credit card for economic development specialist Rita Vigor.
Commissioners, as Rita has moved into her position as a economic development specialist, there are things that she will need to purchase and some travel that will need to be done. And so I would make a motion that we approve to have her receive a county credit card to take care of those businesses, along with the same limit, and which is $3,000 dollar limit on that, and that we go ahead and ask the clerk's office to move forward with that.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Item number 10 on the agenda, we have a public hearing on Tanglewood Subdivision Phase 1, 5 lots located approximately 2,000 South Highway 10 for Dave Smith. Commissioner Holmes, do you want to provide a brief description of this before we open the public hearing?
Dave Smith is here if he'd like to provide just a basic preview of what he's doing here.
We'll have that preview and then we'll open our public hearing.
We're trying to do a small development out by Robertson Lane. There would be 5 lots currently with the possibility of some future development. Some of that might be commercial, some of it might be residential. The plan is to build a new road. It would enter Highway 10 about a block to the north of the current Robertson Lane. That road would be, the Robertson Lane Road would eventually, when they build the new highway, the plan is for that to be closed. And so all of the traffic that now enters Highway 10 off Robertson Lane would go through our new road in our subdivision, enter at the top of the hill, which is a much safer place because you can see a long ways both directions, where today it's very dangerous with the traffic coming from the north toward Robertson. And so we've partnered with the counties, helped us with the planning some. The state is going to actually help us with the asphalt, because as a safety project to make Robertson Lane and that intersection safer. It's finally a solution to the hazardous approach they've had there. So kind of a combination thing between us building a subdivision and the county receiving a pretty good safety project, county and state. So that's what we're doing.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
If you don't have anything else, then we'll go ahead and open.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, so we'll go ahead and open this public hearing, and we'll open it at 5:14 p.m. So all those who would like to comment on this, please come to the mic. And again, this is not a question and answer, but this is for comment for the record. Please state your name. If there's anyone with interest in making a comment, please come to the mic. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close this public hearing at 5:15 p.m. Commissioners, item number 11 on the agenda, we have the review and possible approval of Tanglewood Subdivision Phase 1, 5 lots, located approximately 2000 South Highway 10 for Dave Smith.
Commissioners, before you make a vote on that, if you are inclined to approve that subdivision, we do have to have a development agreement in place with Mr. Smith to provide for the completion of public improvements. He's given me some numbers and information that I need to complete that. I should be able to get that done for him tomorrow. But I would ask that the plat not be recorded till we have, if you're inclined to approve it, the plat not be recorded until we have that agreement in place. So that be a condition of approval.
We could possibly, if we approved, subject to
That's
development, a successful, satisfactory development plan.
Not plan, but agreement.
Agreement.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the Tanglewood subdivision Phase 1 5-lot subdivision, subject to the
development agreement for public improvements.
For public improvements.
And for the plat not to be recorded until that's done.
And for the plat not to be recorded until that's done.
I'll second that motion.
A motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Item 12, we have the review and possible approval of amendment number 3 of the Hill subdivision to combine lots 16 and 17. Aaron Howe. Oh, okay.
We have Todd Thorne here that he can speak to it.
Okay. Unless you feel inclined, you may have come to the mic as well. Okay.
I didn't see Aaron, so I got up. So what Mr. Howe is doing is combining 2 lots on the hill. One of them isn't buildable, so he's just combining them to one, so he has one larger parcel instead of 2 smaller ones. So that's all he's doing.
Okay. Commissioners, do we have any more questions for Todd on this proposal?
No.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second that.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Todd. We have a public hearing to vacate the county's and public's interest in a road right-of-way within sections 12 and 13 of Township 14, South Range 9 East, Salt Lake Base and Meridian, also known as Carbon County Tax Parcel Number 02-0632-0000. Todd, would you comment on this before we enter the public hearing?
So this is a county road that was through the Hill subdivision. It's not where the current road is. It also drops off down to the north where we won't build a road. And so that was identified when we were going through the process with the Hill, with the new road and all these changes that are going in the subdivision, that parcel is no longer needed by the county.
Basically, it's a parcel intended to be a road, and there is no road on that parcel. So we're vacating a road that doesn't actually exist. The ordinance I prepared for you also says that if you pass it, that this should not be construed as vacating any public road in actual existence, including Gordon Creek Road. So it looks like the legal descriptions may have at one time been intended to more or less cover Gordon Creek Road, but Gordon Creek Road is a road that has been used by the public as a public thoroughfare for over 10 years. So it already meets the statutory definition of a public road, and we're not vacating that one. We're just vacating this one that doesn't really exist. It just floats out there in a bunch of weird spots on different people's property.
Just pertaining to that specific parcel number that's been assigned.
Correct. And I have, if anybody's here to speak to that at the public hearing today, I have some printouts I have that can show where that road actually lies as platted out.
Okay. Well, with that information, let's go ahead and enter the public hearing. We will start that at 5:20 p.m. And again, anybody who wants to make a comment, please come to the mic, state your name for the record, and remember that this is for comment, not a question and answer period. And please feel free, this is your time, if anyone would like to comment. Seeing no interest in comment, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at 5:21 p.m. Item number 14 on the agenda, we have the review and possible adoption of Ordinance 501, vacating the county's and the public's interest in a road right-of-way within sections 12 and 13 of Township 14, South Range 9 East, Salt Lake Base and Meridian, also known as Carbon County Tax Parcel Number 02-0632-0000. Commissioners, are there any further questions from the presentation given by presentation explanation of Todd and Christian, based on no comments from the public?
I think it's also important to note that this is not vacating any utility right-of-ways that are already in place across private property. For example, Prywide, they have a water line that goes from Gordon Creek Road up onto the Hill subdivision. This is not vacating that. That's in place with the property owner, so that's just something of note. With that, I'll make a motion to pass or to adopt Ordinance 501.
I'll second that motion.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Item number 15 on the agenda, review and possible approval of Resolution 2018-11, Carbon County Declaration of Drought Emergency. If I can, there we go. Just to read briefly part of this declaration for the public, it says, a resolution of the Carbon County Board of Commissioners declaring the existence of a drought emergency in Carbon County. Whereas, second paragraph down, drought conditions in Carbon County, which are previously classified as D2 severe drought, have worsened to the drought intensity classification of D3 extreme drought as of July 10th, 2018. We qualify as a county to be considered in this type of condition, and as a county we are supposed to pass a resolution declaring such. Do you feel it would be appropriate to read the entire resolution, or commissioners, do you have any other comments on this?
We previously passed a resolution, but it was good for a 90-day period, if I remember right. This would be not only changing the classification, but extending it for a period of 6 months, or in such time as the drought intensifies in the county area. So I don't know that we need to read it all the way in, but I would make a motion to approve Resolution 2018-11.
Perhaps the only thing that to add is the reason for passing a drought declaration opens up funding avenues or support from the federal government to help farmers or ranchers or somebody that depends on the water for their livestock or something. So this just opens up avenues for some additional help to our local residents. I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you for those comments. Item number 16, public hearing to receive comments regarding the 2018 pre-disaster mitigation plan. Justin Needles, would you comment and explain to the public what a pre-disaster mitigation plan is, and maybe a few comments on ours specifically?
Yeah, good afternoon, Commissioners. So every 3 years we get a grant to update our pre-disaster mitigation plan. What the plan does is gives us an outlook of some of the disasters we may have in Carbon County, how we're going to address those disasters with mitigation efforts. That plan also opens up funding opportunities, so the pre-disaster mitigation funding that comes out every year, they like you to do projects that's in your plan. So this identifies what the public wants to see us do and how we're going to do those. So throughout it, it addresses wildfire, drought, flooding, lots of different things that can happen inside the county, and gives us an opportunity for more funding that we want to address those.
Very good. Would anybody else like to make a comment before we open the public hearing? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing at 5:25 p.m. and welcome anybody to come and speak to our pre-disaster mitigation plan. If you have any comments, please state your name for the record. Seeing no interest in the public in making comments, we'll go ahead and close this public hearing at 5:26 p.m. Item number 17 on the agenda is review and possible approval of 2018 pre-disaster mitigation plan. And our plan's only about this thick.
Yeah, I think it's it took me 88 pages to print off front and back side. So the only other thing I do want you to consider if you approve this plan, so it goes to FEMA for comment as well after you guys have this. So it is subject to a few changes from what we have right now. So I don't know how you would word that in or if it needs to come back, but that's the only other thing I'd like you to consider is if FEMA has a lot of changes that needs to be made.
So if we approve it, we could do it subject to any changes from FEMA?
Yes.
Justin, the other thing that you could give the public as far as information is it is online, so they can find it where?
Yeah, so it's online. It's posted on the Carbon County website under emergency management. So it's right there, easy to find. It's one of those nice little blue tabs on the right-hand side. So you can review
find it and review it or print it if they want to have more details, because it is very lengthy.
It is lengthy, but it addresses a lot of things. The one thing I would like to say is thank you to everyone who participated. We had almost every city involved. No, not almost. We had every city involved within Carbon County. We also had members of the public show up and make their comments, things they were worried about. A lot of the different organizations within the county itself helped us to identify some of the problem areas. So it is a very good plan for not just Carbon County, but all the cities as well. They had their opportunity to provide comment as well.
Well, and it's a timely item in the sense of the floods that we've had over the last couple of years and some of the other forest fires, not necessarily in our county, but in neighboring counties, and the firework restrictions and fire restrictions in general that we're experiencing because of the drought and the heat. And so it's been good that everybody's been participatory, and we appreciate your hard work on it.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2018 pre-disaster mitigation plan.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Number 18 on the agenda, we have public hearing on proposed amendments to the 2018 budget. Before we enter into that public hearing, I believe our clerk auditor will review those amendments and changes, and we'll actually present those on the screen for the public to see as we read through them.
Okay. Commissioners, these are the proposed budget amendments as of July 18, 2018. We're going to begin with, I'll just walk through each fund. The general fund, there are a couple of amendments to the revenue side with the finalizing of the 2018 tax rates and certified rates. These adjustments true up to be exactly what we're required to budget by state statute. We made a couple of changes. The most notable ones here. This one, which is $96,000, is for the Indigent Public Defense Grant, which we received and was talked about in a prior meeting. The other, this is, and we created a new account for it. It's attorney prosecution contract, $130,000. That is for the county to take on the prosecution services with Price City and try to streamline prosecution services within the county. The other is an adjustment for mineral lease monies that we have, additional mineral lease monies that we have received this year that were not budgeted. Down here for the public defender, that goes with the change in the public defender system that we have. This is $96,000 worth of additional expense that we will incur. We've already contracted with those attorneys, and that is on. There's another agenda item later on in this meeting that will address one change with the public defender contracts. I have a change for supplies in the clerk's office. We made one benefit allocation in the treasurer's office. In the attorney's office, to go with the adjustment, the adjusted in revenue above, has a change for employees and benefits, and then also professional technical services, which will implement the public defender tracking system through Justware in the attorney's office. In the assessor's office, those two items are highlighted. The way the assessor's office is tracking currently, they're tracking over budget. That's due to an employee that is currently employed that is not budgeted, and we don't have any resolution on that. The commission will have to work with the assessor. Non-departmental, we have adjustments for insurance and unemployment. That's partially due to the layoffs from last year. The unemployment payments have been higher than what was projected. Engineering, we made an adjustment to the benefits calculation. In the sheriff's office, we made an adjustment for automobile operations and equipment. That was to equip out a new vehicle. The adjustment in victims' rights was a change for the grant that goes, the VOCA grant that goes for victims' rights, and there was a corresponding adjustment above in the revenue. The $235,000 adjustment in state contracted services for dispatch. In the jail, there's an adjustment for their travel and fuels and lubricants. In recreation, $70,000 adjustment is for additional switches to be able to maintain the TV programming and some equipment maintenance. Contributions going to other funds, $26,000. These are going to the airport. In travel, with changes to the travel department, there are a couple of changes here. One, it was forecasted there would be a different composition of employees. This reflects those changes, and also changes in restaurant tax expenditures and state matching funds for some of the grants that we've received and how those funds will be spent. In leisure services, we made an adjustment. One adjustment, $15,400. That's both in revenue and expense for the Mike Ballard golf tournament. It received more. It had more revenue, and more funds will be distributed to the recipient of that fundraiser. These are adjustments for revenue. The $70,000 from the Carbon Recreation Transportation Special Service District. That was for equipment in the road shop, which is reflected right there in the road highway general's budget. No changes in Fund 21 or Fund 24 or Fund 25. We had a couple of changes in Fund 26. This was money that was freed up in the reallocation of funds from the travel department, so they will use a little bit of money transferred over from that fund from restaurant tax money. This is more of a placeholder than anything. With the question on Warrior Days and the county fair, we split out additional accounts to be able to track what was spent, and that's a budget allocation moving it those funds to Warrior Days. In Fund 28, Carbon County Future, that department has also been revamped. We made some adjustments to account for the employee that will be there and the revenue from additional grants from the state. In Capital Projects Fund, $6 million adjustment on the EWP projects. We've received several EWP projects. We've spent $3.8 million to date this year on watershed protection projects, and from prior meetings there's another 2.6 roughly, correct me if I'm wrong, so another $2.6 million. So we're making an adjustment for $6 million for this year. That money should be spent this year because of the period of availability of those federal funds. So there's an adjustment both in the revenue and the expense. But it's good to note that those are federal funds that the county has obtained to help out with our watershed and flooding. In Fund 54, we're going to make some improvements to the buildings out at the fair. This is at the airport, and so there's an additional contribution coming from the county's general fund into the airport fund, and that is how it will be spent. No changes in Fund 55. In Fund 56, we're making a change to use the remaining grant money for this building for projects to finish out what needs to be done here before the grant period of availability ends for that, and also to finish out the soccer fields project. So those are the adjustments that we have to the county's budget that we've gone over with the commissioners, and if I don't have anything else.
I think two of the big ones that you did highlight is with the EWP monies, where those are federal funds. Those are not additional tax dollars going into a budget, and also the $632,000 in regards to the county administration building that is grant monies that were part of the application and funding from the Community Impact Board, and so we just need to close out that fund this year.
Commissioner Holmes, do you have any other comments?
I do not.
Okay, so we have the adjustments thus far, and likely there will be more adjustments throughout the rest of the year as things change, and as sometimes we receive mandates that we shall perform certain duties and services, and that all costs money, and sometimes those mandates do not come with funding, so there may be additional changes as the year goes on. We'll go ahead with that intro then.
I was just going to add that the one positive thing that Seth did indicate was the mineral lease funds that did come from coal this year, unbudgeted, another $600,000 that came in.
An additional $600,000 from what was budgeted.
In revenue.
Yeah. Take our blessings where they come. All right, we'll go ahead and enter this public hearing on the budget amendments at 5:37 p.m. And again, this is a comment period, not a question and answer, but a comment period. And if you would like to comment on the budget amendments, please do so by stating first your name for the record and then your comments. If there are similar comments to something that has been said previously, please do not repeat those comments, but just say that you concur with what was already said. And with the hearing being open, please, we welcome your comments, and come before the mic and speak clearly into the mic. Matt, you're with the newspaper. Do you want to comment?
I would say...
Oh, please come to the mic and state your name for the record. That way we can have it recorded as well.
I'm going to comment in general. My name is Matt Ward. I'm with the Sun Advocate. You know, it'd be very helpful. I was talking to Christian about this earlier. We have a website for this county. You know, the lack of public commenting is probably because there's no way to access this backup material before the meeting. So that's a kind of a concern that I've been mulling over in my head about how you guys can address. I don't know what you should do, but there's no backup material for the public to grab. There's nothing online. So I think the general malaise of people at your public hearings not being able to comment is because they're not operating from a position of knowledge. That's my comment.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Seeing no further comments, we'll go ahead and close this public hearing at 5:40 p.m. Moving on to item number 19, consideration and possible approval of resolution 2018-09 approving proposed 2018 budget amendments. And before we make a motion on that, I was just wondering, Seth, as the clerk auditor, would you just briefly review what our process is as far as putting information out to the public with what we have before a meeting? Well, first, would you review what is required between you and Christian, and then what we do?
Well, for a budget amendment like this, there's not a requirement that specifics be put out there. There are requirements for the new budget at the beginning of the year, and those have to be put online for 10 days. But there's not a requirement for this type of budget amendment that it has to be. It doesn't have to be set out online for any type of period, any backup material. You just simply have to indicate that you're going to present that information to the public, and they can come and review that at the public hearing. So we've complied with what we needed to do here. So we didn't omit anything that we needed to admit. That doesn't mean that we can't look at doing some other things with respect to putting information out there, but for an amendment process like this, we just have to have, I believe it's 7 days notice of the public hearing, and it has to be published in the newspaper.
And the budget amendments, when those go out in the newspaper, are available for public inspection at the clerk's office. Many of the candidates that are running for office currently, other members of the public can call or request those, and we can get them in there. The one concern for why it's not available posted to the internet just for everybody is because as those are prepared, they're discussed with the commissioners and distributed to the department heads and different people. If changes come up, which they do, you know, one of the changes we had from Sheriff Wood and looking at his departments as he received what the changes were going to be, we discovered a couple of things that either were typed in wrong or that we projected one thing and it worked out to be something different. He brought those to our attention. We were able to get those in. So keeping
same with our office, we had some
we had a couple changes in the attorney's office we had taken into consideration, but to be able to continually do that, you'd get version 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it could actually be detrimental to confuse the public.
So in a way, you know, for real-time information, the meeting almost has to happen for that information. Now, after the meeting, we can still receive comment. People can still send us in information. We can, even if we feel necessary, if we feel like we need longer public hearing period, we can choose not to close a public hearing for a period of time.
And the other thing is, once the budget is finalized and adopted, all of the county's budgets and their amendments are available on the county's website. If you go to Carbon County Administration and Budgets, you can view the original budget and any budget amendments that have happened throughout the year. They're posted online as soon as they are approved.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that explanation. And, you know, we're definitely always seeking for improvement and doing what we can to be more transparent. There are some difficulties with certain things, and we would definitely strive not to confuse the public, but to facilitate the information as we're ready to send it out. We appreciate your comments during the hearing. Item number 19, I would definitely entertain a motion there with that discussion.
Motion to approve resolution 2018-9.
Commissioners, I'm questioning the numbering. The copy that I have in mind is 2018-12.
So the amended, there's an amended agenda, and the amended agenda, I'm not sure. Do you know, Rita? Rita may know. Is it?
It's the amended agenda should be the
Correct one.
I think the 12 is correct.
So I may need to reprint that before you sign it.
Actually, the one in my packet is 12.
Is
Yes.
number 12.
It's just on the
on the agenda itself. Oh, okay.
Perfect. So I'll go off the item on the agenda. I was reading that off of the.
Will you restate it as 12?
Yep. Motion to approve resolution number 2018-12.
No, it should be 9.
It should be 9?
Yeah. Sorry. So it's listed on his.
The agenda lists it as 9. The paperwork lists it as 12.
9 is the correct number.
Some of these items got assigned numbers. This one got assigned a number before some of our other resolutions did.
Okay.
Which is why it appears in a different order.
So Will, with
I'll
Commissioner
go back
Hope's
to my original motion.
motion,
I'll second that.
2018-9.
we have an original.
You all passed. Good job.
We have an original motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Budget amendments approved. 20 on the agenda, consideration and possible approval of proposed application to the NRCS grant for Garley Wash. Do we have Jones in the Mill here? Would you like to come and speak to this, Jared?
Jared Hanson with Jones in the Mill. This is essentially putting forth an application for additional funding to continue with the studies, and this specific one is the oh, my mind just went blank. PL 566 application that would receive funding for watershed, specifically for watershed areas, planning, PWL planning watershed development that would help to continue forth those efforts in the development of the Garley Wash Reservoir. And basically it's just putting forth a grant, and we've been assisting the county in putting together that grant that will be applied to the NRCS for funding.
Would you state the dollar amount of the grant being sought after?
I apologize.
We do have it. The estimate cost is $5,360,600. The sponsor's requesting 75% of that, or $4,020,450.
Well, one concern that I have, and perhaps it's not really a concern with this grant application, but I know that in the community there's been a lot of changes in regards to the organizations present, or lack of organization present, authorized to make decisions for the water shares themselves, primarily being owned by Price City, though we're moving forward as Carbon County. In other communities, they've formed a water commission or a conservancy district or a special service district, different types of entities authorized by the cities and the counties that participate. Sometimes it's even cross borders, and so multiple counties may participate, but they've delegated their power and authority to make these decisions and to sign contracts and to be applicants and sponsors of grants like this. And so my only concern, and this is just conversational, is are we putting the chicken before the egg, in the sense of, do we need to have this organization already in place so that it is the recipient of this grant money? I mean, can the county by itself, without being the owner of the water rights that would be stored in this reservoir, proceed forward? We probably can, and at some point in the future delegate that. It's just, I hate to obligate another entity 25% match. Does that make sense?
Let me address it in this way. You bring valid points, and those have been points of discussion. on the one hand, I guess I point out that it's probably irrelevant to this particular thing at hand, but it's related, but it's not. But I don't have that jurisdiction as a...
Well, it's related because, and it's not because...
Currently, Price City is the drive behind all of this, but it does take support from multiple entities. And there has been discussions as to whether there are other committees, groups that would better serve as the lead in this, most particularly the Conservation District. But those are...
The Conservancy District, right?
Conservancy District, excuse me. But those are choices, or those are decisions that are in play and is happening behind the scenes and are moving forward. I guess as far as addressing the timeline of things, you have to take these grants when they're available. And sometimes you do the best you can to prepare. If we don't apply now, we're 365 days away from being able to go forward again. And so that just puts these things further behind. In the meantime, you are correct that I think that we begin to put together the resources and the best benefits that will help move the project and get it closer to a shovel-ready deal, and that's in the interest of everyone at heart, for sure.
In the application that you would be submitting on our behalf, so to speak, how would we come up with the 25% match? What would that be made out of? And what are the restrictions there?
You know, Commissioner, really this is just the approval to put the application in. If it was granted, those things before it was accepted and brought back to the Commission would have to have itemized details as far as going into where those grants are. I mean, we could speculate, we could talk about, you know, where they come from, but the reality of it is it's a timing matter as far as putting the grant in. It doesn't mean we'll get it. If we do get it, then all of the things that you've brought up so far have to be in place to come into that. I mean, we can be part of that sponsoring process, but you know, either way, we can either send it in and move it forward, see if we get accepted. If not,
and I don't mean to be critical in my last question. I actually think that Jared has an answer to it. I think that they've already thought through how we would come up with our 25% match.
Yes, maybe I just echo what Commissioner. Basically, this is permission to move forward. Either we expend time doing this, or we don't. We move on to other things, and that's what we need to know on the expedition of our time. I apologize. I don't have that direct answer. I have a team that's working on that and are more clearly focused, and we can address those concerns with you as we move forward in that process and see. But
one thing that's more than apparent is our county needs more water storage. And so we appreciate your efforts there.
Yeah.
I don't know if commissioners, you have any other questions or discussion with Jared?
No.
Any other comments for the Board of Commissioners?
No.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve the proposed application to the NRCS.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you for the discussion. Item number 21 on the agenda, consideration of an addendum to the public defender contract to replace Don Torgerson with Aaron Wise. Christian, would you go over that?
Well, we're replacing Mr. Torgerson with Aaron Wise. That's about the gist of it. Yeah. He's one of 3 attorneys handling matters. And so Mr. Torgerson has been nominated to become the new judge in the Moab Monticello area. He has found attorney Aaron Wise, who practices in Spanish Fork, but I understand he's met with you and has agreed to keep some pretty regular office hours down here, has made a commitment to you that he's willing to provide the same level of services that Mr. Torgerson was providing. The contract also provides that appeals will be handled. Those were previously handled by Mr. Torgerson. Those are going to be handled now by attorney Robert Oliver. But all of the same services that were being covered and provided in the original contract will still be covered, and it's at the same rate of the same amount of money as before. Again, this is a total of a 2-year contract, so Mr. Wise will fill out the remaining, I guess, about a year and a half now of the contract.
And as you mentioned, we did have an opportunity to interview him and do our due diligence, and I felt comfortable with the situation as they presented it. Commissioners, do you have any other comments or a motion?
No. I'll make a motion to approve the amendment to the public defender contract.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second on the addendum. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Moving past 22 that we've already covered to item number 23, a possible closed session to discuss purchase, sale, or lease of real property and discussion of pending or imminent litigation. This would be a closed session. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to go into closed session for the items outlined.
I'll second that.
We will go ahead and enter into a closed session. Thank you for your participation today.